Hi, my name is Audra.
And my name is Michaela.
In today's lesson, we'll be discussing recycling and aquifers. Here we have a model of an aquifer. So in today's lesson, we want to discuss recycling and how aquifers play a part in recycling, because we want to recycle and reclaim our water. And so of course we can't have a complete underground aquifer, so we have a model here. And models are good representation of what aquifers are, but they still can't substitute for the real thing. So what we're going to do, as you can see here, we already have part of our first layer already inside of our model, and so this first layer is going to be our confining layer. Okay, so this is our confining layer of sand. So we're going to funnel some more of our confining layers as we create our aquifer. So first, we locate our confined aquifer sand. Okay, so once we do that, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a layer of about 2 inches thick at the bottom. So we're going to spread this out and make sure that it's about 2 inches thick. So if you will hold that, I will pour a little bit of this in here. All right, so we're getting kind of high in that corner, but what we're going to do is we're going to take a ruler and we're going to spread this out. So we're going to tilt this slightly. So a confining layer is a layer that doesn't allow water or other liquids to permeate through it. So when you permeate through something, you go through it. And so right now we're creating a confined layer, and that confined layer doesn't allow water and other liquids to move through it as easier as some other materials. So right now we're going to put a layer of confined sand down, and then after that we're going to also place a layer of confined clay so that we have a full confining layer at the bottom of our model. Okay, so we're just going to spread this out. Get that even throughout the model. If you would move those tubes for me, thank you. So right now, it looks like we have about 1 inch. We'll add some, let's add some more into this area. And so we're just building up our layer of confined sand for our confined portion of our aquifer. Awesome. And now we're just going to spread that out. So this is the first part of our confined layer. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to place a layer of confined clay. Okay, and this is going to be the second part of our confining layer. So we want to make this, so these are our wells that you see. Okay, and so we want to bring it to about this second well here. Okay, so we're going to fill it up to about this second well. So this layer of confining clay, once we add water to the system, you'll be able to see it congeal or solidify a little bit more. So that it won't allow liquids to go through. And we're just going to spread this out similar to the way. All right. Let's go on the other side and let's add some more clay. And so we want to make sure that we're not getting this into our wells, because then our wells will be clogged up. Okay. And we're going to spread that out. We're going to add just a little bit more so that we're just below the top of this well. Awesome. Okay, so now that we've completed our confining layer, and I want you to remember that our confining layer is our semi-permeable or our layer that is not permeable, so it doesn't allow liquids to go through as much. So after we've done our confining layer, now we're going to add our unconfined layer on the top. And so our unconfined layer is going to be sand. It's going to be a much finer sand, and then we're also going to have some gravel and rocks that you'll see throughout the system. And this just simulates or mimics what you would normally see underground. So of course there might be some dirt, there might be sand, there might be rocks, and so we're going to simulate this as well as we place more materials inside of our aquifer. So remember our unconfined layer, and that's what we're doing now, is our unconfined layer. It's really easy for liquids to move through the unconfined layer of the aquifer. And so we're going to build up our unconfined aquifer right below our lake, okay, so that we can also see some of the water that we add in. We can see whether or not that water is going to permeate into our lake, which we'll be able to see above ground. Just a little bit. And what we're going to do, we're just going to build up and we'll move to various areas as we, okay, a little bit more in this area. Awesome. Let's move to filling up. Okay, a little bit more. Okay. Let's move down to our next section. So we're just gonna allow this to, we're gonna place just a little gravel just to represent some other areas of the earth that may have different compositions. I'm just gonna place a little bit in here. Okay. And this just represents different compositions of earth that we will find underground. So we're going to add just a little bit more sand to this area, and then we're going to fill it with water. And let's funnel just a little bit more sand, and then we'll be done. And we're going to funnel that on both sides, just so we can build up our final layer. Okay, so Now that we have our aquifer built, we have to add the most important part. And you know what that is, right?
Water.
The water, yes. So what we're gonna do is I want you to take your thumb and I want you to invert the bottle. And as you're doing it, I want you to place the bottle inside of these holes. But wait, before we do that, one of the first things that we want to do is we use the Memphis aquifer so that we can get water, okay? And so we have these tubes here that allow us to get water from this aquifer. So we want to make sure that we either shut these wells off before we get started, otherwise we'll have water everywhere and we don't want to lose the water from our aquifer. So we're going to shut down all of the access points to our water. And we have one here. Okay. All right, now that those are closed, now we can invert them. Okay. And I'll hold this as you invert it. Just hold it in place. Now you can already see the water starting to permeate through our unconfined layer. Do you see how the sand is now getting wet as we pour the waters inside the well? So one of the cool things about this aquifer or model aquifer is that it shows us various things that we might find underground. As we said before, this area here is going to be our confined layer. That confined layer has clay in it, and it also does have some more coarse sand that keeps water from being able to freely move. This fine sand, however, is our unconfined layer, and that unconfined layer allows water to permeate or go through it very easily. So we're going to do the other side of our aquifer. Here, I'll switch sides with you. And so now what we can start seeing is that as we're adding water to our aquifer, this will be representative of a lake. And so we're starting to see the water fill up inside of the lake. All right, let me get you to stop there. Here's our aquifer. And so we automatically can see we have down at the bottom, this is going to be our confined layer. And this confined layer is composed of coarse sand as well as clay. Then we have our unconfined layer that has a very fine sand as well as it has some gravel. As you can see, the water is very easily able to move throughout the finer sand. So the first thing that we're able to see as we look at the model is our water table. And our water table, if you can see this little mark I'm drawing here, is represented by this line, okay? So everything underneath this line is going to be our saturated areas, okay? And everything above this line is going to be our unsaturated areas. So you're able to see our water table that shows where the saturated and unsaturated zones are going to be inside of our aquifer. So can you show me the saturated, unsaturated zone as well as the water table?
This is the water table, this is the saturated zone, and this is the unsaturated zone.
Okay, so what do you notice that's different about the unsaturated zone than the saturated zone?
It doesn't have any water, it didn't get wet.
It doesn't have as much water. So the water table is where water and air meet, okay? And so that's why we have this unsaturated zone, because all of this ground in this area is not necessarily fully saturated or fully wet with water. So now that we've reviewed the various parts of our aquifer, can you show me the confined layers of the aquifer?
This is the confined sand, and this is the confined clay, and that makes up the confined layer of the aquifer.
Awesome. So where is our unconfined aquifer?
It's right here, and it's made out of sand and gravel.
So can you tell me what's the difference between the confined layers of the aquifer and the unconfined layers?
The unconfined layer of the aquifer is easier for materials to pass through, such as water, and the confined layer is harder for water. It's harder for water to pass through.
So what is recycling?
Recycling is the process of taking something old and making it new again.
Give me an example.
For example, if you buy a water bottle and it says it's made out of recycled materials, that means that it previously could have been made out of another water bottle, cup, or straw.
So we're going to discuss two types of water today.
Oh, I learned about surface water last week. And that's the water that's in ponds, lakes, and streams, right?
Right. Okay. But there's also water that can be found under the ground.
So like groundwater, isn't that found in wells?
Yes, and wells, but almost anywhere. And so that's where our aquifers come in. There's water underneath the ground. And so Memphis is a great area when we start talking about aquifers, because Memphis has a great aquifer here that we've been able to use for fresh waters for hundreds of years. So what about groundwater?
Groundwater can be found in wells.
Well, groundwater can be found almost anywhere, and scientists have a way of finding, based on the composition of the earth, where this groundwater can be found. Let's do an experiment to see how we can determine the composition of the earth that would best suit groundwater. Okay, let's do this experiment. We have these two cups, and what I want you to do is I want you to fill one cup with this gravel, and I want you to fill the other cup up with sand. Okay, and we want to fill it up as much as possible, just so that we're even for our experiment. So the next thing that we're going to do is, and we're going to record all of our findings on our nice little lab sheet. And so in this absorption experiment, we're going to determine which material was able to absorb the most water. So the first thing that we want to do is let's write down the two materials that we're using. All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to take this syringe and I want you to fill it up with water. But before you put any water in, we're going to record the water level. Good job recording your first water level. And so I want you to slowly pipette it into the sand. And then when it looks like we're going to overflow, we're going to stop, okay? All right, so record your after water level. And so now we have to find the difference to figure out how much water we actually used. So we're gonna have to subtract. Awesome. All right, so now let's try to do the same thing. Let's start all the way over and let's have our starting amount of water, and then we're going to pipette it into the gravel.
So my water level needs to be 30. And my water level after is 23. So the difference is 7. So I guess the difference between sand and gravel, well, the difference is.
So which material was able to hold more water, the sand or the gravel?
Sand.
Awesome. You can find an old bottle pump around your home, but make sure that you ask a grown-up first to make sure it's safe. So aquifers are really fun, and I wanted to send you home with an experiment that you could do at home with your little brother or your little sister, okay? So we're gonna make a cup aquifer. All right, and we're gonna do it very similar to the process where we made the other two aquifers. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna place our pump inside of our aquifer, okay? Now we're going to start building up our sand, or our unconfined layer. Next, we're gonna place an aquitard, or a confining layer, on half of our cup aquifer. So the purpose of this clay is this is going to be our aquitard, or our confining layer. And in this layer of our cup aquifer, water is not going to be as able to easily permeate or move through this area because we have this aquitard, or this confining layer, that's keeping it from being able to flow freely. So now our next layer is we're going to place gravel on top of the whole system. Okay, and so now let's saturate our aquifer by adding water to it. All right, that's good. And so now we can see if our pump system works. Let's grab a cup and let's pump. Awesome. And that is how we're able to pump water from our cup aquifer. We hope you learned a lot today about aquifers and how to keep Memphis's aquifers safe.